and welcome to the Islamic Finance Weekly Show, where we discuss developments in the non-interest finance market and how it affects investment and socio-economic activities. Islamic finance all over the world evolving as the landscape of financial services. In a couple of years, it has witnessed development through the global Islamic finance industry, which is fueled by a dynamic Sukuk market and significant investment in banking, the capital market, insurance, fintech, and innovation. In Nigeria, the conversation continues how of benefit the non-interest finance is. But the fact remains that Islamic finance is not religious but an ethical business. On today's program, we will be discussing the emerging trends in Islamic finance and implications for the Nigerian economy. To throw more light on the topic, I have my guest, Mr. Mohammed Bintube, Chairman or CEO of Buraq Capital Limited. Also, Mr. Mohammed Bintube was the first MD of Jaiz Bank. Mr. Bintube joins me virtually. Good morning, Mr. Bintube. Welcome to the program. It is really good to have you on Islamic Finance Weekly.
Good morning, Bukola. It's my pleasure and privilege to be on this your platform.
Thank you very much, sir. Let me begin the conversation by looking at Islamic finance from a business perspective. One of the cheapest and easiest way of funding infrastructure projects is through the issuance of Sukuk. But beyond infrastructure and housing, what other sectors can Sukuk be deployed to in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Bukola. Just to give you a background about Islamic finance in Nigeria, it all started taking momentum and speed with the establishment of Jaiz Bank, the first Islamic bank in Nigeria. At that time, the concept is new in Nigeria. Even the regulators, the central bank, NDIC, Securities and Exchange Commission, NICOM, etc., because there are no operators, they have very little knowledge or even the regulatory framework. So it is the coming on stream of Jaiz Bank that actually cleared the way and became the pace setter in the establishment of Islamic finance. And even this Sukuk that you are asking is because once Jaiz Bank started, there were no liquidity management instruments. That's why we at Jaiz kept on knocking at the doors of central bank to come up with liquidity management interest. And we thank God, the former governor and former Emir of Kano, Sanusi Lamido, played a key role with the DMO, the Ministry of Finance, with the Securities and Exchange Commission to bring out this Sukuk. Now, coming to your question, besides housing and roads and infrastructure, there are also, right now, we are working with one of the banks to float a Sukuk, 100 billion, to increase their Tier 1 capital. So it's not only housing or roads.
You mean the recent Hajj Bank Sukuk bond issuers of 100 billion naira private Sukuk?
That is the one I'm talking about, and Buraq Capital is one of the advisors. Platform. Of course, you can also do Sukuk even for education. You can pay school fees, you can pay credits, even for telecoms. You can buy airtime, you can do a lot of things with Sukuk. Then in the real sector also, things like oil refinery, sugar refinery, plant and machineries for fast-moving consumer goods, etc. Even the telecom sector that I said, aviation sector, Emirates, some of their flights, the aircraft, they use Islamic finance. The Dubai airport, I think Terminal 3 or so, they use a lot of Islamic finance. So there are many other sectors besides those that you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly, sir. We need more of private Sukuk and even dollar-denominated Sukuk. We need more of that. And Sukuk, like you've explained, Sukuk should be deployed for sectors like agri, health, telecommunication, education, and transportation sector that can drive economic growth and stability. Thank you very much for sharing your perspective with us. But how can the government leverage the Sukuk mode of financing to address socio-economic challenges and unlock economic opportunities in Nigeria?
Thank you, Bukola. The major challenges of the Nigerian economy. Number one, the economic growth, the rate of, given the potential of the Nigerian economy, we are not growing as fast as we are supposed to. That's why the level of population explosion, the level of growth of the informal sector, all these are not growing as fast as it should be. And that's why we have a lot of unemployment, a lot of insecurity. So that is challenge number one. Challenge number two has to do with infrastructure, power, road, and of course, the third challenge for the economy is low level of income, low level of purchasing power. So these are the three challenges. Now, how can the government, using Islamic finance, ameliorate some of these social issues you said? I think the first one is about how can we boost education, for example, human capital. Islamic finance can play a lot in that. Number two, financial inclusion. That will now ameliorate this issue about low level of income. And that has a direct impact on the level of security, kidnappings, etc. And then, as you can see, the telecoms and ICT is one of the major contributors to the GDP. In fact, it's among the highest. And therefore, the government leveraging on Islamic finance can also boost the contribution of the ICT and create employment. Therefore, all these things like criminality, kidnapping, etc. will be reduced.
You are the pioneer MD of Jaiz Bank, and recently the bank marked its 10th anniversary of services in deepening financial inclusion in Nigeria. What is your assessment on the current challenges facing the Nigerian economy, and how has it impacted the banking sector?
Okay, number one, in terms of the recent anniversary of Jaiz Bank, I am pleased and proud to be associated with the establishment and growth of the bank. Like I said, Jaiz Bank is the pace setter in Islamic finance. With the coming on board of that, you see, for you to have an ecosystem of the Islamic finance, you have the operators like Jaiz Bank, Taj Bank, Lotus Bank, Sterling Bank, Stanbic, Lotus Capital, Marble Capital, 117 Capital. So these are on the operator side, if you are looking. And then you have the regulators. You have the central bank, you have the Securities and Exchange Commission, you have the NDIC, you have the NICOM, you have the PENCOM. So all these are regulators, and then you have the customers of the bank, okay? And then you have the investors in the bank, both direct and through the primary market and the stock exchange. So that's the ecosystem. And the system can only grow and contribute to economic and social development if all these work in tandem. So I'm pleased to say that the coming on board of Jaiz Bank has created all these things. Because, like I said, without Jaiz Bank, the central bank will not have the operators to regulate, isn't it? And that's why when we were setting up, we work very closely. In fact, we work closely with the central bank and the other regulators to reel out the regulatory and supervisory framework even going to the National Assembly to make sure that the legal framework, the act is there to enable these operators. So there are many ways that the coming of Islamic finance will contribute. But coming specifically to your question, the growth of Islamic finance is now contributing to job creation. JAIS itself has nearly 1,000 direct and indirect employees. At the same, Taj Bank is also coming with job creation. Sterling Bank, Lotus Bank. So all these are job creation. Number two is Islamic finance is a new phenomenon, and therefore we are learning new skills, bringing new skills. So that's why there's a lot of training by the central bank, by the operators, etc. Number three, it helps in providing alternative finance, because what we have is the conventional finance, the interest based, but it's an alternative based on ethical standards, like you mentioned earlier. Ethical standards of transparency, objectivity, and fairness. And ethical standards because it avoids things like gharar, which is speculation and gambling with people's money. So all this is helping in deepening the financial system and giving people alternative means of financing.
Definitely, so amidst the global and domestic economic challenges, Nigeria's banking sector remains stronger with rising profits and capital adequacy. We need to talk more on financial technology. Without Islamic finance or Islamic banking, we need more technology. And digital transformation is a must for Islamic banking and finance if they intend to achieve a significant leap in providing non-interest financial services. So how can Fintech fit into Islamic finance? What do they need to do differently and in partnering with financial technology?
Well, Fintechs need Islamic finance, and Islamic finance need Fintech.
Exactly.
For example, I mentioned about financial inclusion. One of the best for them to collaborate and cooperate is to provide the Fintech platform to make it people for convenience, easily accessible, cheaper, so that the number of users of Fintech will increase exponentially and therefore create revenues to the Fintech operators, and also for the Islamic financial institutions to expand their customer base, especially at the retail level. The other second thing where they can cooperate is that, as you can see, consumer finance is growing in Nigeria, whether in terms of buying cars, furniture, generators, or even housing. Now, just like in developed places, we need to come up with very good credit scoring system so that the over-reliance on collateral and too much due diligence. But if you have a very good credit, in a few seconds, in a few minutes, you can provide credit to this. So with a Nigeria population of about 200 million, if you can provide a good credit scoring system, the Islamic banks will benefit, the fintechs will benefit in terms of growing the cake, in terms of baking, not only baking, but also growing the cake, so that we have more investors, especially the retail, smaller ones. The third one is one of the banks, I can tell you, Taj Bank is about launching its digital bank, and they plan to leverage on that to increase their customer base. Now they have about 300,000 customers. They believe that by the time they launch the digital bank, that should expand to about 1 million customers. But we feel at Buraq, we feel that if we help them to leverage on fintech, believe me, they can go beyond 1 million within the next 2 years. They should be able to go to 2 to 3 million within the next 2 years. So these are the areas where we see handshake and collaboration between Islamic finance institutions and the fintechs.
Yeah, there are still some areas that require attention for Islamic fintech to maintain its sustainability. And as we wrap up the conversation, as one of the pioneers of Islamic finance in Nigeria, if you are to provide solution to the challenges facing the Nigerian economy, what would be your recommendation?
First, we all the players in the ecosystem, the value chain, we need to come up with way of deepening the financial system, make financial inclusion, bring financial services closer, cheaper, and convenient to the vast majority of our people. And therefore, now you can see the federal government, Sukuk, and the other private sector Sukuk are mostly long-term, 7 years, 10 years. So if we can all cooperate to bring in short-term investments that are Sharia compliant, that are ethical.
Instead of the long-term investment in Sukuk.
Exactly. So that's one of them. The other thing is for the regulators, especially the government agencies, to develop the framework to enhance a clear and level playing field. For example, by the nature of some of the products, like things like Murabaha, because Islamic banks buy and sell at a markup, sometimes they face the disadvantage of double taxation. When they buy, they pay VAT or holding tax. And when they sell, so it becomes uncompetitive. So that is what is called tax neutrality. I think the Federal Ministry of Finance, FIRS, have been working on it. I think the laws have been there, I'm not sure. But we need to bring this to the fore to create a level playing field. And of course, the issue of cooperation of the FRAS, that is the Financial Regulatory Advisory Committee of Experts, they need to be improved by use of technology, by virtual presence, development of their skills, and making it accessible to all the regulators. So in all this, then the system will improve, and then not only local investors, but even foreign investors will try to come into the Nigerian Islamic finance for the development of the system, the economy, and social growth of the country.
Definitely, sir. Absolutely, And we also need to bridge the manpower deficit in the Islamic finance industry.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed Mustapha Bintube. It was nice having this conversation with you on the Islamic Finance Weekly. We appreciate your intervention and thank you very much for coming on the program, sir. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Bukola. Really appreciate it.
Recently, the Nigerian government announced the $410 billion energy transition plan with the target of year 2060, which will seal $10 billion investment annually for the next 4 decades. This is a laudable step to creating jobs and uplifting millions from poverty and can be best supported by the Islamic finance industry. Apart from the energy transition, Nigeria's pathway to sustainable debt is through non-interest-bearing loans like the Sukuk. It is time for more innovative steps in leveraging these unique products to invest in education and healthcare, which are 2 triggers to Nigeria's human capital development as a nation. That will be all for this edition of the Islamic Finance Weekly. You can follow our social media platforms and watch our website to read more stories and watch our videos. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching and have a lovely day.